They came for my family's land under the cover of darkness. A late-night knock, blue lights flashing through my window. That was the beginning. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a paperwork error. But when I opened the door and saw the officer's face, I knew this was something else. Something bigger. What started as a dispute over a simple HOA violation spiraled into a fight that would uncover secrets buried for decades, secrets that powerful people were willing to destroy lives to protect. I wasn't just defending a piece of property. I was standing between a corrupt system and everything my family had built for generations. And when I tell you how far they went to break me, you won't believe it. My name is Harper, and this land isn't just dirt and timber. It's a living legacy, etched into the soil by hands far stronger and rougher than mine. My grandfather came here with nothing but a dream and built everything. You see from the ground up, the ranch, the lake, the towering pines that whisper when the wind moves through them. Every inch of it carries his fingerprints and his promise. Protect this land, Harper, no matter what. I grew up with that promise ringing in my ears. My childhood was the smell of fresh-cut hay, the crackle of an old radio in the barn, and the quiet ripples of the lake at sunset. That water was my sanctuary. My grandfather said it was the soul of this place. And maybe he was right. For decades, Pine Hollow was untouched, a hidden paradise far from city chaos. But then, things started changing. They called it progress. New neighbors, new rules, and then the three letters that would change everything. HOA. At first, I thought it was harmless. A few guidelines, community meetings I never attended, a newsletter with smiling faces and promises of order and value. But rules have a way of growing teeth. The letters started small. Your fence doesn't meet standards. Your shed violates HOA aesthetics. Then the fines came. More letters, thinly veiled threats. They didn't just want compliance. They wanted control of the lake, of the ranch, of me. I tried to reason with them, to explain that this land wasn't like the manicured lots in their glossy brochures. It was history, family, sacred. But reason doesn't matter to people who only see dollar signs. And soon, it became clear this wasn't about community standards. It was about power and the woman pulling the strings. Lydia Warwick, the HOA president, a name that would come to haunt me. Behind the polite smiles and neighborhood picnics, she was building something far bigger, a scheme, a takeover. And standing in her way was me, and the land she wanted to own. What I didn't know then was just how far she would go. The letters started coming slowly at first. Thin envelopes with the HOA's seal stamped like a warning sign. Violation of community standards. Immediate compliance required. At first, I thought it was a mistake. A loose board on the dock, a faded number on the mailbox, things I could fix in an afternoon. But soon, they multiplied. 3 letters became 5. 5 became 10. Each one more aggressive than the last. By the time Lydia Warwick called me to a meeting, the air in that HOA conference room felt like a noose tightening around my throat. She smiled, all teeth and venom, as she slid a folder across the polished mahogany table. Inside was a list of fines that made my chest tighten, thousands of dollars in violations I'd never heard of. Non-compliance with landscaping regulations. Unauthorized alterations to shoreline property. They were building a case brick by brick, and I was the target. I walked out of that room shaking, not just from anger, but from something worse. Fear. This wasn't about grass length or mailbox colors. It was war. The neighbors I'd grown up with started avoiding my eyes. Conversation stopped when I walked by. The HOA had poisoned the well, spreading rumors that I was endangering property values. Sophia, the one person still standing by me, tried to keep my spirits up. But even she looked worried when another notice arrived. This one marked "Final Warning." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch, staring at the lake, the same water my grandfather taught me to fish in. His words echoed in my mind. "This land is more than dirt and water. It's our story. Don't let anyone take that from you." But the HOA wasn't just threatening anymore. They were moving in for the kill. A certified letter landed in my mailbox the next morning, accusing me of violating municipal codes. The fines were now in the tens of thousands, and at the bottom, in neat legal language, was the dagger. Failure to comply may result in forced sale proceedings. My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the letter. This wasn't just a fight over rules. They were trying to take everything: the ranch, the lake, my family's legacy. Sophia found me hours later, slumped in my grandfather's old leather chair, the weight of generations pressing on my chest. For the first time, I felt broken. How do you fight a system designed to crush you? That's when Walter showed up. My grandfather's oldest friend, carrying a banker's box so worn the corners were soft as cloth. He set it on the table like it was full of dynamite. "Your grandpa was smarter than folks gave him credit for," he said, his voice low, eyes shining with something I hadn't seen in weeks: hope. Inside the box were papers yellowed with age, contracts and deeds I barely understood. And then I saw it. A legal document signed in 1972. The words on that page stopped me cold. Perpetual land conservation contract. I stared at it, my heart pounding. Could this be real? If what Walter said was true, this wasn't just protection. It was a fortress, ironclad, unbreakable. My grandfather had paid extra to lock this land down tighter than any county ordinance. No government entity, no HOA. No one could force its sale or development without violating federal law. For the first time in weeks, I felt something dangerous flicker to life inside me. Hope. But hope can be a dangerous thing. Because just as we began to breathe, the next blow landed. Harder. The county sent another notice, this time initiating eminent domain proceedings. Lydia's fingerprints were all over it. She'd been planning this for years, creating a paper trail of complaints to justify the seizure. Even with the conservation contract, I knew what this meant. Lawyers, courtrooms, months, maybe years of battles. And Lydia wasn't fighting alone. She had developers, money, and an entire system on her side. As I stared out at the lake that night, the wind rippling the water like molten silver, I made a silent promise to my grandfather, to Sophia, to myself. They will not take this from us. Not now. Not ever. And that's when the real war began. The courthouse smelled like old wood and older grudges. I sat at the plaintiff's table, staring at the glossy seal of Pine Hollow County etched into the floor, feeling like it was watching me, mocking me. Lydia sat across the aisle, dressed in her usual power suit, but something about her looked different today. The smug grin was gone. Her eyes darted like a trapped animal's. She knew this wasn't just another HOA hearing. This was federal, court, and the stakes were life-altering. The judge entered, and the room snapped to silence. My pulse hammered in my ears like war drums. For weeks we'd been digging, pulling every string Walter's box of secrets gave us. That 1972 perpetual conservation contract wasn't just strong, it was nuclear. It had language so airtight that even the government couldn't force a sale without committing a federal crime. But Lydia didn't back down. She doubled down, filed counterclaims, dragged in county officials. She thought her network of power and corruption could bulldoze through anything. And honestly, a part of me feared she was right. The prosecutor stood first, reading charges that echoed like gunshots in the silent courtroom. Racketeering, fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The list went on, and every word felt like a brick in the wall closing in around Lydia. But then came the curveball. Witness after witness took the stand. painting a picture of a woman who had weaponized an HOA into a personal empire. Former board members, contractors, even homeowners. Lydia had bled dry with fines and liens. The room gasped when the prosecutor revealed evidence of offshore accounts, pre-sold development contracts, and, most damning of all, recordings of Lydia laughing about destroying families for profit. And then, the door opened, and the man everyone thought had disappeared walked in. Harold Vance. The missing HOA treasurer Lydia had blamed for everything. Turns out, he hadn't run. He'd been hiding in plain sight, building a case against her for 5 years, working with federal investigators. The air turned electric as Harold took the stand. His voice was steady, his hands calm as he dropped bomb after bomb, emails, financial ledgers. Even text messages Lydia sent bragging about taking my lake. But the killing blow? A recorded call where Lydia literally said, "Harper's Ranch is the crown jewel. 50 acres of lakefront worth millions. I've already got a developer lined up. I just need the county to play ball." The room erupted. Lydia's face drained of color. The judge banged his gavel demanding order, but it was too late. The truth was out. Lydia cracked like glass under a hammer. First, she denied everything. Then, as the evidence piled higher, she broke, sobbing, confessing, trying to spin the story. She named names, county administrators, HOA board members, even the developer who'd promised her a fat commission. Her confession detonated through the courthouse like dynamite. By the time she stopped talking, half of Pine Hollow's government was under investigation. And then the judge turned to the document Walter had given me, the conservation contract my grandfather signed 5 decades ago. He held it up for the entire court to see. "This," the judge said, his voice firm, "represents foresight and integrity. Any attempt to violate it is a federal crime punishable by law. Harper's property is hereby declared permanently protected. No entity, governmental or private, has the authority to seize or develop it." For the first time in months, my lungs filled like I'd been drowning and finally broke the surface. I looked at Sophia. She was crying. Walter grinned so wide I thought his face might split. The gavel came down. Lydia was sentenced to 25 years for racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy. No parole before 2047. The HOA dissolved permanently. Their assets were redistributed to the homeowners she'd fleeced for years. When they led her away in handcuffs, Lydia turned her head just enough to glare at me one last time. Pure hatred burned in her eyes, but beneath it, defeat. The empire she'd built on lies had collapsed, and I'd lived to watch it fall. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, lighter, freer. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones shoved in my face. But all I could think about was the lake. That still water waiting for me like a promise kept. That night, I stood on the dock where this war began. The sun dipped low, setting, the lake on fire with orange and gold. Sophia joined me, leaning against my shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. We did it. And for the first time in months, I believed her. The battle was over, but the scars ran deep. For weeks after the trial, Pine Hollow was a ghost of its former self. The once pristine lawns and manicured hedges stood as silent reminders of what greed can do to a community. HOA signs were torn down, the headquarters padlocked. Lydia's name became a curse whispered in shame. But for me, it was the lake that mattered. The morning after the verdict, I walked down the old wooden dock barefoot, the boards warm beneath my feet as the first rays of sun spilled across the water. It was quiet, so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat, steady now, no longer pounding in panic. The lake was still, a mirror of silver and gold, just like when I was a kid. I knelt at the edge, letting my fingers skim the surface. And for the first time in months, I smiled, Sophia joined me, her laughter soft, almost unbelieving. "It's yours, Harper. It always was." But it didn't feel like mine. It felt bigger than that, like I was just a caretaker of something sacred. My grandfather's voice echoed. In my mind, this land is our story. And now, thanks to him, that story would outlive us all. Word of the case spread like wildfire. Reporters camped outside for interviews. True crime podcasts called it the Pine Hollow Conspiracy. A documentary team offered a deal, promising to expose the corruption that nearly destroyed an entire town. People I'd never met wrote letters, thanking me for standing up when it would have been easier to walk away. But the world doesn't stop spinning just because you win a battle. A week later, as I was sorting through a pile of leftover mail, I found it. A plain white envelope, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No threats, no demands. Just 4 words printed in bold black ink. "This isn't over yet." I stared at those words until they blurred, the chill crawling up my spine despite the summer heat. Out on the lake, the wind picked up, rippling the water like shattered glass. And in that moment, I knew the war I thought I'd won might have only just begun. Because when money and power are at stake, there's always another Lydia waiting in the shadows.